What should be your relationship with failure in your business? I hate to break it to you, but failure is guaranteed. It doesn't mean your business is going to ultimately fail, but what you envision when you start your business often doesn't include all the missteps, mistakes, the tough situations, the hard conversations, the people who said they were going to buy, who didn't buy, the months where you weren't making any money, and all of the in-between. I want to talk today about a guy who was an Uber Eats driver who experienced failure firsthand before going viral on Reddit and Twitter. We're going to get into it today. My name is Blake. I'm the host of the Good Advice podcast, and we're going to be talking today about failure and how if you're in a season of failure right now, I want to encourage you not to be too in the weeds on it, not to be too hard on yourself, but to understand that failure is the process that we all go through when we're running a business. Before we dive into today's episode, we have a word from one of the incredible businesses that sponsors this podcast. Check out this quick ad. We'll be right back soon. Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket. So I came across this picture the other day, and the backstory of it blew me away. This was a picture of a guy. It was a flyer that a guy had put all across Seattle. I posted about this on LinkedIn, by the way, and other socials, so you might have already seen this from me. But essentially, this guy posted a flyer across Seattle, and it basically said, hey, I will deliver your food to you for only $5. Now, this is a pretty... I don't want to say it's an interesting concept. It's really not that interesting. It's really a pain that we've all experienced at some point where, we live in a culture where getting food delivered is such an incredible convenience. You can get food from almost any restaurant right to your door. Heck, even like grocery delivery. You can get groceries delivered to your door sometimes the same day that you ordered it. I have a Walmart near my house that does drone delivery. I can literally order something on their website. The markup is tiny. It's tiny. It's almost, especially like for canned goods, it's almost non-existent. And then what they'll do is they'll have a drone bring that item over to my house. It takes about maybe 10 or 15 minutes and it gets dropped on my lawn. So we're living in a time of incredible convenience. And 10 years ago, I think before COVID, we would have said that something like this was impossible or just going to be, much farther away from where we are today. So I include, Uber Eats, DoorDash, all that stuff in that same conversation of convenience. But the only problem, though, is that the fees for these things have gotten so incredible. In fact, personally, I have not done a door delivery in a long time. At least a year. Maybe 2 years. Only because delivery fees have become outrageous. You order a meal for however much it costs, which, by the way, this is where they get you. The items are often marked up. And on top of that, you also have your delivery fee. And on top of that, you obviously got to tip your driver too as well. So you order something for 12, 13, 14 bucks, but the total cost you're paying for it is sometimes 25, $30 because of the delivery fees and tips. Now, I do think that we we also live in a society where people aren't super smart with their money. Um, they're not too clever with how they spend their money. There's a Bible verse that I'm going to butcher just because it's ingrained in my head at this point. But I think it's a fool and their money is soon parted. So, there's never going to be any shortage of people who spend their money incorrectly. And that's really not even the purpose of today's episode. I mean, you know that. I know that. It's not a revolutionary concept that, for every pet rock out there, there is, $1 million worth of people who are willing to buy it. Right. So this is less about the people who pay for those things. Because even you, as some of my listeners, some of you, maybe you ordered out food like that just the other night. Personal choice, though, I just don't deliver it. I don't do it. I just don't. It's just, I can't consciously spend that kind of money unless I was desperate. Family's away. Maybe, it's a Friday night and I'm watching a movie and I got a craving for it'd be Andy's for me. Does DoorDash do ice cream, by the way? Is this see, obviously I'm not as well traveled in this food delivery world. And now, see, listen to me. I just totally, ragged on this demographic of people. And now you're seeing me in real time discover the wonder of it as I concoct this, made up example of, hey, actually, it'd be really great to get some Andy's ice cream on a Friday night while I'm, sitting at home. So, okay, we're going back. We're changing what we said, Now I'm a big fan of it. But anyway, point being, it gets expensive. So this guy, Tony, he's an Uber Eats driver. He's not making good money. And presumably, he's probably worked there long enough to see that these fees have gotten pretty outrageous. And unfortunately, with buying behavior, I'm willing to bet he probably also had some pretty big deliveries where the delivery charge and the fees were so high that he probably paid the price. There were probably people who, ordered from him or ordered from Uber Eats who were like, well, man, I'm already spending 30, 40 bucks. I'm not going to add a 10% tip on that. I'm not going to add a 20% tip on that. I'm going to add maybe $1. So he's probably witnessing, experiencing this kind of thing firsthand. So he comes up with this idea. He has this idea that says basically, I can do this better. These places are going to charge this much. Why don't I do food delivery for $5? Now, if you've never been to Seattle, it's a much more, actually, I don't know where you live, honestly, but, depending on how walkable your city is, what kind of transit there is, my understanding is that Seattle has a pretty good setup with that. But this guy has it worked out where you can message for his availability. And if it's within reason, he'll say, yep, I'll deliver it to you for $5. Now, if the order total is over $50, he'll do it for 10% of the order amount. So that way, if you're ordering $200 worth of food, he's not going to do it for $5. He's going to do it for $20, which is still also, by the way, really great. So this guy puts up this flyer, puts the flyer all over Seattle. And I wish I could tell you this was a story where, you already know where this story goes, right? We see this story all the time on social media where someone talks about, I quit my job, I launched the business, and oh my gosh, my life is changed. Oh my gosh, I never would have expected, my eyes roll out of my head when I see these things, but I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast. I have a folder which I need to get better because now I'm just saving it to my documents folder. But I used to have a folder that I'd put everything into this, and it was called Don't Do This. And it was all the cringy, silly, untrue, stupid things that marketers put on social media to try to convince a sucker to buy from them. One of them was this Facebook post where someone posted basically to the extent of, wow, to think 6 months ago, I was a server in a restaurant. I was waiting tables. And now I am a multi-million-dollar business owner. I never thought it was possible. I had to change my mindset, yada, yada, yada. By the way, if you want to know how you can do it too, click the link down below. I see stuff like this all the time, different versions of it, different variations of it. Nowadays, I think people do a little bit of a better job of calling out this kind of BS and recognizing, like, hey, it's never the whole story. It is too good to be true. Which, by the way, if you've been thinking about spending money on something like this and someone has promised you the world, if someone's promised you, it's going to change your life, if they're saying things like, which, by the way, this is just flat out manipulative. When someone says something like, hey, are you ready to change your life? Hey, are you ready to have the future you deserve? Hey, are you ready to have all the things you'd ever want? You can know that that is manipulation and that is someone trying to make a sucker out of you. Seriously, I don't say that lightly. I say that earnestly and sincerely. I sell a course myself. I sell a $500 how to do a podcast class called Podstart. And in that class, you can know I don't say anything about, hey, when you push record, you're pressing start on the best new season of your life. I don't say, hey, this is going to be the best thing ever. It's going to make you a ton of money. I don't say, hey, when you do a podcast, you're going to have customers running to you and rushing to you. You know what I tell people? This is what I tell people before they buy from me. And then also, it's like one of the first videos in this course. This is going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of work. You're going to want to quit. And if you decide to quit, that's okay. Podcasting is not for everyone. There are plenty of people, customers of my own included, who get to episode 15, 16, 17, and they realize, you know what? This isn't something I want to do. That's okay. But I try to explain to people the cost of all of this, the pain of all of this, the work of all of this before they get into it. I had a similar conversation with someone who was talking about quitting their job to start a business. They're like, I'm ready to quit my job. I'm going to go all in on it. And I said, no. Hang on. You have no concept of what this is like. So before you burn the ships, make sure you have a way to get home. Before you're going to burn the ships, make sure you have, do you have any money set aside? Do you have money saved up? What's your plan if this doesn't work? What's your plan if you realize you hate entrepreneurship? You hate running a business? What are you going to do? So anytime a savvy digital marketer talks to you about, saying yes to the rest of your life. And again, I hate this line, but you deserve it. You deserve it. Let yourself enjoy this. You've earned this. It's actually at an event the other day where someone was selling something and that's the phrasing they used. And I just thought, man, whether this person means it this way or not, there's just too much bad juju around this expression. Anyway, getting back to what I was talking about. I wish I could say this story of Tony, the Uber Eats driver, that he created a flyer, he put it around Seattle, and people rushed to him. They tracked him down. They said, hey, you're the guy. I got to buy from you. Here's what actually happened, though. Put the flyer up, spent money making the flyer, put it up, and nobody called him. Now, I don't know the exact details. I haven't talked to Tony. We're not, I only know his name as Tony because the company's called Tony Delivers. We're definitely not BFF. Like, let me tell you about my buddy, Tony. I don't know what his last name is. But it failed. From his perspective, it failed. So I assume that means no sales, small sales, whatever. So we did another version of the flyer. He thought, you know what? Maybe it's the flyer. So we did a second version. That one failed too. Then he did a third version. That one failed too. And then a fourth version. And that one failed too. He did a fifth version of the flyer. And that's the one that went viral. It took off on Reddit, took off on Twitter. He got so popular that he was able to expand his business to LA, San Francisco, and New York. And now he's even selling merch. I saw a picture of a guy was wearing a shirt with Tony on it. Like he's got fans. He's got people who are, wearing his swag. I thought about this story. You can know that if you feel like running your business is hard, you can know you're in extremely good company. You can know you're in extremely good company. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times that I've cried about my business, about the work that I've put in, the deals that, golly, over 6 years, the deals that I was sure were a win, the deals that I was sure were closing that didn't close. If I could tell you about the 5-figure deals that I found myself thinking, this is a lock and this is going to be life changing, that ultimately did not get locked. I think about a deal I closed that I thought was going to be incredible, $20,000 plus deal, and a soft commit to $60,000 over 3 years that ended up being a total train wreck of a customer where I eventually walked away. I said, hey, unfortunately, this isn't going to work for me anymore. A lot of the stuff on paper sounds really great. It sounds really good until you actually run a business and then you realize this is really freaking hard. This is really difficult. You're running a business. You have friends who don't always understand the journey. You experience, and if you don't know this yet, if you're thinking about starting a business, let me be really clear and honest with you. You are going to experience failure. For some of you, that failure will be brief. You will find your footing very quickly. And that will be because you have enormous experience. You have a level of expertise that the average person doesn't have. To you, it feels like normal. It feels like this is just how you see things. And you don't see the 20, 30, 40 years of training and development that has made you incredibly gifted at running a business. For many, many other people, your season of failure will be long. And I don't say that in a gut punch way or I hope it for you. Like, I hope that my journey is not like anyone else's, in that I hope that I can be the glutton for punishment who has learned what not to do so that for every person who listens to this podcast, they can do it differently. Which, by the way, my biggest pain points when I started, no clear offer and no experience in sales. I shouldn't say no experience. I had sold $250,000 at my previous consulting company. And it was part of my reason when I left, thinking I can just sell a fifth of this. If I could sell a fifth of this next year on my own, that's $50K in my pocket. And actually, no, previous business, $212,000 that previous year. So I thought if I can sell a fourth of this, this would be $50K. And I thought, I can go get a fourth of that. I can make that. I could not make that. I could not make that. My first year took me a long time to get my first sale. I had a lot of clients who weren't good customers. I had a lot of free people that I was giving advice to, not understanding that people pay what they value, and that if you are free, you don't have value. So I thought I knew how to sell. I didn't know how to sell. I was part of a great brand that did the selling for me, essentially. It had enough of a reputation that it sold for me. But I didn't know how to sell. So I had to understand, what exactly is my offer? What exactly am I doing for people that is compelling? And I had to understand the price point around that. and I had to understand how to sell it and how to talk to the right people. That was all a very painful process. On top of the fact of just COVID, a wild economy, things just getting crazy. So sometimes we think the journey is supposed to be easy. I mean, we know it's not supposed to be easy, and yet when we actually get into it, we are surprised that it's hard. I saw this quote. I can't remember if I've shared this before, because I blab on these podcasts so much. I saw this quote from Chris Do. I'm a big Chris Do fan. I really don't like marketer, influencer type people because so many are insincere. I really like Chris Do. I like his content. I like his advice. There's a handful of people I really like. Love Chris Do. I've mentioned Damon Burton on the show. Todd Capone. There's a lot of great people. A lot of great people I love to follow. But Chris Do had a line about this the other day, probably about a month ago. And he said, and I'm going to butcher it only because I'm just calling it to memory now. But basically said, courage is not something is not courageous if you don't think you can fail. You're not being courageous if you don't think you can fail. If failure is not an option. And what it reminded me of, my best friend when I was living in Houston, I'm a Christian. He's an atheist. So many great conversations about God and life and just an awesome friend, just a great guy. His name's Adam. And we were having a conversation about faith. And he said, none of this was challenging. It was just, we're just talking. And he said, I mean, how can you believe? And this was someone who had also walked away from his faith. So he was like, I just don't see it that way anymore. I just don't believe anymore. What is it for you that keeps you believing? And I said, Adam, if there was a surety that God was real, then what value would my faith have? What value is there in faith if there's indefinite proof? Having faith, by definition, is the absence of proof and the absence of surety. And it's the embracing of I don't know and discomfort. And man, when the lights go off, I sure hope I was right. That's what it is. In the same way for your business, to show up and be courageous, it's not courageous if you know you're going to be successful. It's not courageous if you have tens of millions of dollars of endless funding. For the person who did quit their job, they have just enough cash to make it to the next month. And every month, they're generating just enough cash to make it to the next month. I think there's some courage there. When we're faced with the possibility of failure, that's really when courage shines. So this isn't to say that you should, if you've been working in your business for 20 years and you're on food stamps, maybe your business isn't working. If you've given it a fair shot, if you're like, man, I swung for the fences and I got knocked out. I struck out. That's not who I'm talking to today. Though I think there are people who have given it a fair shake and probably need to realize, you know what? I did my best. I gave what I could. And in this season, it's not for me right now. Doesn't mean I won't come back to it later, but it's not for me right now. But I'm talking to people who you're in the thick of it. You're battling for the future of your business. You're battling against doubt and insecurity, maybe even friends and family who've told you to quit. My advice to you is don't quit. Don't give up. If you have someone who, and I'm going to say it's very generic, put a little disclaimer on this. This is not for everyone, okay? But I'll put a little disclaimer on that. But here's what I'll say. If you have a product or service that you sell and someone has paid you money for it, ask yourself this question. However many people have bought this, would 10 times more people out there buy it again? If I've sold this to one person, are there 10 other people out there? I'm not talking like if you went to the ends of the earth and like turned over every stone and like looked in every crevice, would you maybe find him? I'm talking seriously. Have you sold it? And do you have something that more people would want to buy? And if the answer is yes, don't quit. You have something that people want. And the answer to the problem, the answer to the pain point isn't, I'm just stupid. I just don't have what's in me. I'm not capable. I knew when someone told me this, that they were right. I knew when my boss told me when I quit that I would be back. I knew they were right. Whatever thing you typically, wherever you go when you're being really ugly to yourself, don't think that way. And understand it's not about you. It's a problem to be solved. If you've sold it, but you can't find more people, it's a marketing problem. It's a networking problem. It's a sales problem. If you find yourself on a lot of conversations and you can't close the deal, it's a value problem. See what I'm saying? So instead of it being about you're an idiot, all the things, I don't know how mean you guys typically are to yourselves, but whatever you typically do, don't go there. And instead understand this is a problem to be solved. Solve the problem. Figure out what's really going on and keep doing it. And here's the deal. Here's the other thing that's kind of scary, but also kind of true. Think back to when Tony's putting up these flyers. Do you think Tony that he got on YouTube and watched a bunch of videos on how to do a great flyer? Do you think that he paid for a course on great flyers that go on signposts? No. Tony kept showing up. That's all he had to do. Flyer 1 didn't work. Flyer 2 didn't work. Flyer 3 didn't work. Flyer 4 didn't work. And Flyer 5 was the moneymaker. He didn't go to art school. Nothing against art school, by the way. He just didn't go do all these things to learn about how to do it better, which isn't even like the point. The takeaway isn't like not to improve yourself. I mean, absolutely. I've been up at 11 o'clock at night watching sales videos. But the point is understanding that sometimes we honestly don't know what to do. And if you felt that way, it's okay. The important thing is that Tony showed up the next day. He went out and did it again. He put his face out there. I mean, literally, his face is on the flyer. So he's put himself out there for rejection. What's the expression about luck, by the way? I want to look this up real quick because I don't want to get it wrong. I think I have it, but I want to make sure I got it. Oh man, I can't find it. Okay, here we go. This is how the quote is. I don't actually like it this way, but the quote is, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." This isn't even the version that I've seen. The version I've seen is, "Luck is what happens when consistency meets the right timing." I'll say that again one more time. Luck is what happens when consistency meets the right timing. you don't necessarily need to become a genius in business, but you do have to keep showing up every day. And if you do that, again, if you've already sold this, if you have customers, you're going to figure it out. You are going to figure this out. Okay? All right. Hey, that's today's episode on the Good Advice Podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you're a first-time listener, what the heck are you waiting on? Click the subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are. And don't forget, you can always support our podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice for as little as the price of a cup of coffee. Or if you want to advertise on our show, you can always reach out, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Thank you to our long-term sponsors, those of you who've been long-term listeners and new followers of the podcast. It's great to have you here. That's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.